Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating guest. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your diversity story with us today.
Hi, my name is Dean Clifford-Jones. My pronouns are he, him. I am 38 years old and I am based in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. I've been living in Queensland most of my life. I moved here in the 1980s and lived on the Sunshine Coast, where I then went to study at university in Brisbane. I finished my undergraduate studies in 2008 after practicing as a law clerk for many years beforehand. I finished with a Bachelor of Laws with honours and also completed a Bachelor of Arts in Politics and Government. Since graduating university, I went on to become a Judge's Associate, and after completing my Judge's Associateship, I went and worked at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in Queensland, where I became a Crown Prosecutor, and stayed at the ODPP for about 6 years. After those 6 years, I went and worked as the Principal Lawyer at the Office of the Director of Child Protection Litigation until being appointed to the Parole Board Queensland in 2019. And over the past 4 years, I've been a professional board member on the Parole Board Queensland. Separately, for my working in full-time in the law, I volunteer and founded Pride in Law in 2017. Pride in Law is an LGBTQIA+ law association based in Australia. It's quite a unique law association, one of the first of its kind. What we do is we support LGBTQIA+ lawyers and other legal professionals in the legal profession to connect with one another, to provide visibility for other lawyers in the legal profession, but to also provide education for those wishing to understand and know more around diversity and inclusion for LGBTQIA+ lawyers. We've been operating in Queensland, Western Australia, Victoria, and New South Wales for the past 6 years, and soon to launch other chapters around Australia. We have members all around Australia and internationally, and we have sponsors as well. These are corporate sponsors that sponsor the work of Pride in Law. Pride in Law is a wholly volunteer-run law association. So from myself as the chairperson of Pride in Law, all the way down to our inquiries officers, we all volunteer our time because we want to see and feel like we belong in the legal profession. It's been a great journey over the past 6 years. We've learnt a lot. We've made submissions to all levels of government. We've connected with other legal professionals across Australia. And we've made a tangible difference to making sure that people feel like they belong in the legal profession. I started Pride in Law back in 2017 because I had been living in central Queensland, and I moved back to Brisbane with my husband. And when moving back to Queensland, I discovered that there wasn't just one or two of my friends, but there was quite a few who weren't out in the legal profession. Now, you might find that a bit difficult to understand in 2023, but back in 2016, 2017, there was still a great need for better inclusion for LGBTIQA plus lawyers. Australia was in the midst of marriage equality debate. We needed further representation at all levels so that people felt like not only they feel included, but they feel like they belong in the legal profession. And that's why I decided with my husband to launch Pride in Law. It originally started as an online networking association in Queensland, but it quickly grew. It grew to have, as I mentioned, people from all around the world connect with other LGBTIQA plus lawyers. And where I use the term lawyers, but it's for everyone in the legal profession.
No, that is wonderful. So you took it upon yourself to be an advocate to create this association. There must have been a reason. Was it because you felt isolated and alone and wanted to bring other people who were feeling the same together? What was your main motivation?
Yeah, I suppose when I started in the legal profession, so I started working in 2004 in the legal profession, and I didn't feel like I belonged here. I was the first in my family to be able to go to university. In fact, I didn't even think I would be able to make it to university due to my family and things going on in the background. But I did. And when I went to university, I loved the place, but I was studying for a career that I felt as a gay man, I didn't connect with other lawyers. There was no other gay lawyers that I had connected with. And so I decided after that time that it was probably around the right time for Australia to have an LGBTIQA plus law association. We've got great networking associations for women in the law, Asian Australian lawyers, Indigenous lawyers, but we've never had a national LGBTIQA plus law association to help connect people, to have educational events, to have opportunities for advocacy, and to provide visibility for those in the legal profession. It can't be underestimated how important those networking opportunities are for LGBTIQA plus lawyers. Networking is an essential part of the profession. It provides great support for people's mental health, but it also provides opportunities and opens doors for others in the profession. So that's why I wanted to create something that others feel like they belong, that they could connect with others in the legal profession.
Now, the term belonging is an interesting term. I was reading somewhere where it said, for you to feel like you belong to a group, it's like going to a party and they're playing music and you are asked to dance, right? But if they're not playing the kind of music that you like, that you can relate to, you can still feel like you are othered. You are not quite part of the group. Now, in organizations, what can be done to ensure that all members of staff, one, feel safe to identify who they are and to express their needs in a workplace situation?
Well, I think there's multiple things that workplaces can do to make sure that their staff feel like they belong, whether it's the right policies and regulations that support individuals, whether it's having networking opportunities outside the workplace, whether it is sponsoring organizations such as Pride in Law and other diversity networks. These are all things that organizations can do, but it can't be underestimated how important it is to have the right frameworks available to employees and other staff. If you don't have the right parameters, if you don't have the right regulations, then it can be really difficult for people to feel like they belong.
Yeah. That sense of belonging is absolutely crucial. So Australia is moving forward in a very positive direction. The legalization of gay marriages. Everybody was waiting for this to happen, and it finally did. What difference did that make to your life? Because I know that you mentioned that you're married. What did it do for you personally?
For me, it was quite an emotional journey to find my husband, who we met at university, actually. So we've been together now for over 15 years. And I think growing up in Australia, you never pictured being able to marry a same-sex partner. That was just never on the cards for people of my generation. I'm so pleased that has changed. It has literally saved lives, and Australians should be incredibly proud for voting yes in the marriage equality debate. You and others have changed the lives of tens of thousands of people, and that can never be underestimated. And in my view, we celebrated the love and the individual person when we all voted for yes in that marriage equality referendum type situation back in 2017.
So as you were growing up, you obviously had a very supportive family, I take it. What was it like for you growing up and asserting your space in the world in terms of your sexuality?
Yeah, look, I love my family. They're a huge part of who I am, but I wouldn't say that I had a supportive family, unfortunately. I no longer speak to my father, and we haven't spoken for around 15 years. But I have a very supportive mother who loves me and cares about me very much. And the support of family is incredibly important to the LGBTQIA plus community. In fact, a lot of the time they say that we build our own family, because sometimes people can be rejected from their family because of how they identify. And that's not just identify as a gay or lesbian person, but people who transition, people who are gender diverse. These things are not as widely accepted as many people may feel in, the big cities like Melbourne and Brisbane and Sydney. When you live in a rural place in Queensland, as I did in the 1980s, and back in the 2010s, it's a very different place when you leave the big cities. And I suppose that's another reason why I started Pride in Law. I didn't want to have just people feeling like they are connected in the cities. I wanted people to make sure they felt connected out in central Queensland. And that's why Pride in Law has been holding events, not just in the big cities, but around Australia.
Yeah, I can imagine the rural cities is a big need for support. So how many chapters do you now have throughout the country?
Yeah, so we have the first chapter was in Queensland, and that was launched in 2017. The next chapter was launched in Western Australia in 2020. The next chapter was launched in Victoria formally this year, and that was launched in Melbourne in their historic Supreme Court Library back in May 2023. And the next chapter, it will be launched in New South Wales, and we have a formal committee there after having an implementation committee for the last year. And that will be launched formally in 2024. But they have been holding events to gather the momentum to start connecting people. So we talk about a formal launch, which has been occurring in the ceremonial court or the ceremonial libraries of each state, and that's what brings the judiciary and other high-end legal professionals all together to celebrate how far we've come, but also to recognise how far we still have to go in the legal profession.
So when you compare where Australia is to the rest of the world, how far off are we? What is the comparison, do you think?
I think in some respects, Australia is leading in parts of our laws and parts of our regulations, but we still have so much more to do. And it's taken a long time to get here. I think from my perspective, I would love to see Australia advocate more clearly to the rest of the world around the death penalty surrounding gay men, particularly in relationships, consenting relationships. It should not be underestimated how many people are still prosecuted because they identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. The death penalty is still imposed in many places around the world, and I think Australia could be leading more in that respect.
Wow, I didn't realize that. These are some of the things that we don't really get to hear about or fully understand the challenges on the ground. Now, I know that domestic violence is something that you are very passionate about preventing. And this is what leads to a lot of people ending up in prisons, crimes of passion, etc. What are you doing on the domestic violence front in your community?
Yeah, so outside of Pride in Law, I'm on the Queensland Law Society Domestic and Family Violence Committee, where I have been a member of that committee for the past 5 more years. But Pride in Law was very proud back in 2018 to hold one of the first LGBTIQA+ domestic and family violence workshops. We brought in a judicial officer to come and assist and talk to the community. And what we did in that respect is we decided to start to hold more events surrounding LGBTIQA+ relationships. Many people don't understand that domestic violence affects many people, whether it's the aggrieved or victim themselves, whether it's family members, whether it's children in those relationships. And relationships themselves are not defined as being between a man and a woman. LGBTI relationships are sometimes a quieter part of the community, but unfortunately, domestic and family violence still impacts the LGBTIQA+ community. And it impacts us in quite a unique way. LGBTIQA+ members can be outed by their partner. They can be coercive controlled by their partner. And there's often nowhere for the aggrieved or perpetrator to go and get counselling for the domestic and family violence that they're committing or at the other end of. So we still have a little bit of work to do from all levels of government and from all political persuasions on how we can better support LGBTIQA+ community members around domestic and family violence. Because as often is said, it is a silent part of the community, but the impact is still just as wide.
Yeah, it is quite wide-reaching. Now, I know that in April 2023, the Queensland government announced that it was committed to repealing and replacing the Queensland Anti-Discrimination Act of 1991. Tell us a little bit about that and why that is really important.
Yes, so the Anti-Discrimination Act in Queensland hasn't been updated for many, many years. And over the time, what we've seen is quite a progression in human rights. And Queensland was very fortunate to have a Human Rights Act implemented in 2019. So Pride in Law, along with other organisations, have made submissions to the Queensland government around how and what to include in the update of the and particularly surrounding LGBTIQA plus community. It's important that we continue to update legislation, whether it's in Queensland or in others, or other states, because these types of issues need to be addressed. Issues surrounding discrimination in the workplace, whether it's around a person transitioning from male to female or female to male or to another gender diverse part of the community. People should feel like they are supported by their governments for their uniqueness, for their individuality. And that's what the Anti-Discrimination Act should implement. It should implement and show that the government supports everyone in their community.
Yeah, it's imperative. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what your sexuality is, you do need to be protected and represented as well. So if I could take you back, let's get a little bit personal, to that young boy who was living in a rural town, knew that you were gay, didn't know how to navigate the space you were in. Just in case there's a young person who's listening to this podcast and is in the same space, based on what life has taught you up to this point, what 3 nuggets of wisdom could you give the younger you? What would you have wanted somebody to have shared with you or talked to you about?
I think the younger me would have liked to know that it gets better. It gets better for you. Things will be hard. The road that we travel is less traveled, but it will get better. I think the younger me would also like to know that you will find your place in the community. And I think the younger me would like to know that you will find another family. You will find the support that you need. You just need to give yourself time.
Yeah, and you've certainly put yourself out there. You're creating environments where people can find their tribes, because sometimes when you're in isolation, you don't even know where to start. So it's a great starting point that you've given us here. So if I take you into the future and we look at you at the age of 90, and you're now sitting in your rocking chair, surrounded by your partner, your dogs, your cats, your children, whoever is with you at that time. If I could teleport you into the future and you could have a conversation with the 90-year-old you, based on how you're living your life, the things you're advocating for, the world you're trying to create, what would you say to this wise man who's leading you to that point?
I would probably ask, does it continue to get better? I think there's a lot of things happening in 2023 and that have occurred in the past few years where we've seen, unfortunately, some real backward steps for the LGBTIQA plus community, particularly in the United States of America and in other places. And I only have to look to our transgender and gender diverse friends and the drag queens that represent such an important part of our community, and the harassment and murders and other violence that is accorded to those people. particularly in the United States of America. I hope that that type of violence will end. I hope that things will start to get better for them. And I hope that we'll start to see a world where individuality is celebrated rather than people trying to knock that individual down.
Yeah, I love asking that question because for advocates, you are doing the work so that you can leave this planet a better place than we found it, right?
Mm.
I'm exposing these stories so that people who watch online, who listen on Spotify, can say, hey, I listened to a podcast and it totally changed my day. And just constantly putting out positivity, trying to just enlighten things that are heavy to talk about, difficult to talk about and address. So now we go back to the workplace. What can employers do? What better systems can be put in place to support your community?
Yeah, I would love to see workplaces update their policies and procedures around people transitioning. I think that people who transition should be able to have support of their employees. I think that whether that's through medical leave, I think workplaces should also support better parental leave for people who wish to have children. That's not always supported across all fields of the profession. And so I'd like to see an improvement around the policies and procedures that support LGBTIQA plus people. They're just a couple of things that I think that we could really make a difference on, and it wouldn't be too hard. These things are easy to update, and they improve the lives of many, many people.
Yeah, and you're living in a world where legislation perpetuates, at least here in Australia, you can advocate and get the laws changed. I'm from Zimbabwe, and we have laws that have been set in colonial days that still exist. People are being imprisoned, people are killed. So you're really fighting for human rights here. It's not just LGBTQ community rights, it's human rights. And I really commend you for your work. Please don't tire. I know it can be exhausting and it feels like you are fighting a losing battle for the community, but every single step that you take, you're getting closer to the goal.
Yeah, of course. And I think we should never forget that LGBTI rights are human rights. And I think it's important saying that again. LGBTIQA plus rights are human rights.
Thank you. Dean, it's an absolute pleasure meeting you. Like I said, thank you for your work. Thank you for trying to leave the planet a better place than we found it. I would love to stay connected with you. Hopefully, we'll have you speak at our first Diversity Connector conference later in the year. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to some of the important words I had to say today. And I hope I've been able to connect with the people who are viewing this online, because connection is really important. And I commend you on the work that you're doing in trying to improve the diversity and inclusion and people's sense of belonging in the community. So thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. I think when we put a human face to the stories, it becomes real. So thank you for being here with us and sharing your story. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. Have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks, Dean. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,